Okay, I'm going to show you guys the steps for how to 3D print on the Creality printer, and this will be a step-by-step guide from the creation of your part and then switching it over to the 3D printing software. So you've got a part that you've made and you want to take it and 3D print it. The first thing that we need to do is if you have an assembly, so like I have an assembly right here, and the steps are the same for whether or not you have a part or whether or not you have an assembly. But this is made up of two different, this is the top and this is the bottom put together. So what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to move down to where I have my part, and I'm going to right click on that object, and I'm going to hit export. And when I click export, what I want to save it as is I want to save it as an STL file, and we're going to save it as an STL file. The units, you want to make sure that the units are set to millimeter, and the resolution of fine is good. That's okay. You can name the file whatever you want to. I would recommend naming it something other than unsaved. I'm going to call this one Jumbo Cupcake. And make sure that your option is set to download. And also, you want to make sure that this part is not clicked on. You don't want this checked on, because if you have multiple parts, what this will do is it will make different files for every single one of the parts. And if you're just making one object, you normally want it to just be one thing. So I would recommend, unless you want them as separate parts, that you leave this unchecked and then click OK. When you click OK, this is going to save to your Google Drive folder. And what we're going to need to do from there is you're going to have to take this file from your Google Drive account and you're going to have to move it over to one of the laptops that we have. And one of the laptops I'll have available inside the 3D printing room. And you can go from your Google Drive and download that file, that STL file that you just created, and you'll be able to bring it into Cura. So the folder that we'll be looking for whenever you click on the laptop is you're looking for the one that looks like this icon. It says Ultimaker Cura. We're going to click on that. Make sure that you already have your file downloaded from your Google Drive. And if you need help with that, let me know and I'll show you, or maybe one of your team members knows how to do that part. I'm going to let Cura load here for just a second. And I'll have the computer set up to where these settings will already be there. So hopefully you won't have too many setting issues to worry about. We're just going to be mainly focusing on taking your part and placing your part down on top of the build plate. Still loading up here. My computer is like super potato mode, so it takes a little bit of time to get Cura going. Here we go. Looks like we might actually be getting something now. And here we go. All right, so whenever it loads, you're going to see a screen that looks roughly like this. First thing that we want to do is we want to click on this little file button up here to open our file. And usually if you downloaded it from Google Drive, it's going to be in your downloads folder over here. So click on the downloads folder and then click on the object that you imported from, or sorry, the object that you exported from OnShape. So I'm going to click on Jumbo Cupcake and I'm going to hit open. And this should automatically put it on the build plate like this. You can double check by right clicking and moving down here. You shouldn't have any open space between the plate down on the bottom and the shape itself. So we're going to have a build plate like this, okay? And there are a couple of things that you can do if you want to. You can click on the object and you can move the object, although I would only move it in the green and the red direction. Please don't move it in the Z direction, because if you have any space in here on the bottom, your print will fail. The infill up at the top, leave it at 20%, and that basically tells you that there's going to be 20% plastic inside the shape and 80% air inside the shape. The build plate's pretty sturdy, so I don't necessarily think we need any adhesion. We might need to add some supports depending on what you're going to make and how you're going to make it. So in this case, the plastic looks like it won't really have too much difficulty. This might be a little bit of a questionable part because you're printing layer by layer. So when you get up to this part, there might not be a layer underneath this that will actually work. I'll 3D print one and we're going to try it and see. And sometimes that may just be what we have to do. It's just a little bit of trial and error. But also, to be more efficient, if your team is making multiple things, you can also hit the open file again and you can open a different object, and that different object will also load on the plate. So see how this one clicks now too? Now you have two objects on the plate, and whenever you hit the print button, it will print out both of the objects. It'll print each one layer at a time. So it'll print the first layer on this one, then the first layer on this one, then the second layer, then the third layer, then the fourth layer, then the fifth layer, all the way up. Obviously, when you get to about right here, this thing will be done, this little pastry, and the rest of this is going to be specifically on just finishing the 3D print of this top part up here. So ultimately, the way that you really want to do this is you want to have all of your projects, or as many of them as you can, put on one plate. And if you have them all on one plate, you can just hit the button and then you can forget about it. You don't have to worry about it uh, going back and loading something and then pressing the button and then going back and loading and pressing the button. You can just hit the print button, let it go, and then several hours later, you can come back and your parts are there. So ultimately, this is what we're going to do. When you get all of your parts set up to where you want them set up, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to load a couple more because I can fill up this plate. I'm going to add another cherry pastry. So now I'm going to have three things put in here, and making sure that they're not on the build plate or anything like that. Um, if you chose millimeters, this is going to upload on a 1-to-1 scale of what you made in OnShape. And it's going to say, even if you made it in inches, it's going to say like, it's going to automatically convert those to millimeters. And all of the 3D printers default to millimeters. It doesn't have an inches mode. So make sure that whenever you export it, that your unit selection is in millimeters, or else we're going to have a little bit of trouble getting this in Cura. Your objects will be like super tiny because it's going to think, if you made it 2 inches long, it's going to think that it's like 2 millimeters long instead. So I'm gonna, you know what? I'm gonna add another cupcake in here. I think that let's just go ahead and add another jumbo cupcake. Get this going. Okay, so now I have 4 objects on my build plate, and the more you add on there, the more it's going to not like you. But once you get them exactly where you want them to, you hit the button down here at the bottom that says slice, and it will split it apart and it'll calculate how long it'll split them all up into layers and write the G code for it so that your 3D printer can actually make the file, and it'll take it a little bit of time. The more stuff you have on there, the longer this is going to take. And it'll give you a basic estimate of how long this is going to take. I think our 3D printer prints a little bit faster than what it says, though. Yeah, like for this one, it says that it's going to take 20 hours and 49 minutes. It prints faster than that, but the jumbo cupcakes, to be fair, are pretty big. So whenever you've got it set up to there, it's going to give you either a preview or a save to file. You want to hit save to file, and if you already have your SD card inside the laptop, it will ask you to automatically save it to the SD card, which is super handy because then you can just automatically pull out the SD card once you get it saved, and you can take it straight over to the 3D printer. I'm going to go ahead and hit save to file, and make sure that you name it whatever you want to. It's always going to name the G code files. It's going to name it CCR10 underscore and then whatever your file name is. So it always defaults to CCR10 because it's a Creality 10 uh, base to it. Okay, and then once you hit save, you should be able to take it and move it over to the 3D printer. And from there, it's just selecting the file and then hitting print. I think this is going to give you a basic idea on how to get these models over to the 3D printer. And then from there, I can help you guys out with it. Have a good day.